In October 1953, nestled deep in the misty mountain ranges of Colorado, Fort Ashwood was quietly scheduled for reactivation by the U.S. Army. Official documents cited strategic defense needs and surplus budget allocations, but to the locals, who had lived in its shadow for decades, none of that mattered. They whispered stories, not statistics. For nearly a decade, the fort had stood abandoned, its fences sagging and its barracks sinking into moss and silence. Officially, the closure had been blamed on post-war budget cuts. Unofficially, no one dared go near it. Hunters changed paths. Surveyors skipped its coordinates. Children were told not to even say its name after dark. Stories had circulated for years. Strange sightings, cold patches of air, a pale woman seen near the northern barracks, a streak of silver darting between trees, and most famously, a midnight sound, something between a cry and a howl, as if the forest itself remembered loss. Captain Hugh Carson, decorated war veteran, had been handpicked to assess and prepare the site for reactivation. Cold, efficient, skeptical, he didn't believe in ghosts, myths, or warnings from dead men. His mission was simple: clear out the unexplainable and turn the base into a modern munitions hub. Carson arrived at Fort Ashwood just after sunset, his boots crunching on gravel as he stepped from the jeep. The air was thinner here, laced with pine and something sour, mold, perhaps, or something older. The gates stood open, rusted at the hinges, and the sentry posts were nothing more than rotting wooden shells. Even the wind seemed reluctant to move here. He walked the perimeter alone. No lights, no sounds, only his own breath and the rhythmic creak of his sidearm brushing against his coat. The buildings looked worse than the reports had claimed. Sagging roofs, shattered windows, walls pockmarked by time and weather. Somewhere in the dark, a bird shrieked and went silent. That night, he camped in the old commander's quarters. He kept his weapon close, not out of fear, but out of habit. He lit a single oil lamp and spent hours going through decades-old personnel files. Fading ink, redacted names, strange notations. Pale female apparition, confirmed twice. Silver anomaly seen near tree line. He paused at one file, a report dated 1946. A patrol had gone missing near the northern barracks. Only one body was ever recovered. No visible wounds, no blood. But the throat, torn open clean, as if by claws. Outside, the wind picked up again. But Carson was already drifting into sleep, still dressed, still armed, still skeptical. The forest waited in silence, and under the sliver of a moon, something began to stir. Sleep did not come gently. Carson's eyes grew heavy, but his thoughts twisted like smoke, folding in on themselves. There was no peace in this place, only stillness, the kind that felt like holding your breath too long beneath the surface of a black lake. Then the sound came. Not from outside, but inside. Not in his ears, but in his chest. A low hum, like wind through bone. He opened his eyes, or thought he did. The room had vanished. No walls, no ceiling, just forest. Endless, weightless, silver-lit forest. Before him stood a woman. Or perhaps not a woman. Her skin was white as ash, her eyes a cloudy gray, and her robe shimmered like fox fur caught in moonlight. She spoke, not with her mouth, but directly into his mind. You burned what was ours. But still, we will not fight you. Give us 3 days, then we leave. Forever. He wanted to speak, to ask, what are you and where did you come from? But his throat felt blocked. He could only gasp for air, and even that breath felt borrowed. The silver foxes circled her feet, 11 in number. Their eyes glowed, not with malice, but memory, as if each of them carried something old. Older than the fort, older than war. She stepped forward, and though her feet made no sound, Carson's heart jolted like it had been struck with lightning. His breath caught, His mind screamed, "Wake up! Wake up now!" When he woke, he was sitting bolt upright, his skin drenched in cold sweat. The oil lamp still burned beside him, its flame dancing like it had seen something. He looked to the window. There, just beyond the tree line, a flicker of silver vanished into the dark. Morning came gray and cold. The air in Fort Ashwood felt denser somehow, as if the trees had crept closer in the night, their silence no longer passive, but watchful. Hugh Carson stood outside the command quarters, jaw tight, coffee untouched. His eyes were fixed on the tree line. He told himself it had been just a dream, just the mind playing tricks in a strange place, warped by folklore and fatigue. But then he remembered the woman's eyes, not hateful, not pleading, just ancient, unafraid, and that unsettled him more than he cared to admit. He walked back inside, opened the old field comms unit, turned the dial, called in the order. Requesting immediate clearance, full firepower. Circle and strike north compound. His voice didn't shake, but his hand afterward lingered too long on the handset. There were no official personnel at Fort Ashwood, only a skeleton crew on radio relay. Airstrike authorization was already pre-approved. It took 6 words to trigger it. Execute protocol. Fort Ashwood. Confirmed. And that was it. The wheels began to turn. As he returned to the commander's quarters to wait for the airstrike report, Carson unlocked a drawer beneath the desk, one he had forced open his first night. Inside were sealed requisition forms from 1945. One name, his, appeared on half of them. The others were blacked out, the signatures smeared with time. He reached for a small, folded note tucked beneath the stack. On it, in his own handwriting, dated October 1946. 2 crates, west storage, underfloor panel. He stared at it a long time, not in guilt, but in calculation. The war is over, he told himself. This place will burn. No one will ever come back. He folded the note, slid it into his coat, and gave the strike team confirmation. At 0600 hours, the valley sky began to rumble. A distant roar, like the awakening of something metallic and monstrous, echoed off the granite cliffs. B-29s, black-winged and deliberate, emerged from the east like a slow-moving swarm of thunderflies. Their bellies opened, and the forest below waited in breathless silence. Then, the bombs fell. Napalm ignited the pines first. Trees erupted like torches, some without even a second to scream. The old barracks shattered beneath the weight of air pressure and fire. Walls folding like wet paper, roofs lifted and flung like broken wings. The flames did not burn, they consumed. Carson watched from the ridgeline. His windcoat snapped in the wind, face expressionless. But his hand, the same one that had signed the order, remained clenched in his coat pocket. A junior technician whispered behind him, voice barely audible. "Sir, what exactly did we bomb?" Carson didn't answer. He kept watching. He had to make sure. And then, through smoke, through ash, through the noise of burning history, a streak of silver rose. Not a missile, not a flare, something alive. It cut through the air with the precision of instinct, and for the briefest second, Carson thought it turned back to look at him, a glint, 2 eyes, then gone. By noon, Fort Ashwood was reduced to cinders. Carson filed no full report, just one line. Fort secured, no activity. Washington, D.C., 1955. Morning fog clung to the marble steps of the Capitol, like old ghosts too tired to leave. Journalists swarmed the plaza, their flashes popping like little lightning bugs. And in the center of it all stood Hugh Carson, not in uniform now, but in a sleek charcoal suit, the cut of a man remade for politics. 2 years had passed since Fort Ashwood was wiped from existence. Carson had risen swiftly through the political ranks, buoyed by his war record and his stoic charm. Words like honor, discipline, and hero followed him like obedient dogs. Now he stood at the cusp of appointment, Assistant Secretary of Defense. The hearing was expected to be a mere formality, but fate, like foxes, waits quietly in shadows. It happened in the 5th hour, a lull in the questioning. The room quiet, a pen scratching paper. Then, a voice, dry, dusty, a voice like leaves in November. Ask him where the gold is buried. Carson did not blink, but something in his jaw tensed. The room turned, slow as a turning ship in fog. A man had stood up in the back, old, disheveled, out of place. No name tag, no credentials, just that sentence, and the stare. Carson's aide leaned in, whispering sharply, "We're clean, right? Tell me we're clean." But Carson didn't speak. He couldn't, because deep in his bones he recognized that voice, not from the battlefield, but from a dream. The press spun like sharks in blood. That same night, federal agents raided a long-abandoned house registered under a logistics firm once managed by Carson during the late war years. The home sat forgotten outside St. Louis, its floorboards rotten, its basement choked with dust. But under one section of concrete, their shovels rang against something metallic. A steel crate, sealed tight, standard issue, military. Inside, they found government-stamped gold bricks, neatly stacked, unweathered, each one engraved with the Department of the Army seal and a serial number. It was not just gold, it was wartime gold, ghost gold. The discovery hit Washington like a slow explosion. The headlines screamed, "War hero under suspicion, Carson linked to missing military reserves, Fox in the henhouse." In TV broadcasts, Carson's face looked carved from marble, still, expressionless. But his eyes had changed. The same way stone looks when it realizes it can break. He never denied the charges. He never defended himself. In court, he sat silent, like a man already sentenced by someone far older than law. Security reviewed every camera in the Senate building. They isolated the moment the old man stood, spoke, and turned. He left no ID, no escort, no entry log. No one remembered him entering. And in the final frame before he vanished from sight, his face blurred, as if the lens couldn't hold him. One guard insisted the man's eyes were not human at all. Pale, almost gray, like smoke frozen in glass. Another said they smelled something strange after he left, something like pine, or fur, or fire long put out. Carson was transferred to federal custody within 48 hours. The cell was clean. White walls, steel cot, the kind of place where men are left alone with themselves and their ghosts. At night, he began to talk in his sleep. Not full sentences, just names, sounds, fragments, over and over. Fox, Silver, she's here. The guards wrote it down. They thought it was just madness. They were wrong. He lasted 3 weeks in prison. No appeals, no visitors, no words spoken, except in sleep. The guards stopped laughing after the 3rd night. They said he would sit upright in the darkest corner of his cell, head tilted as if listening, not to the hallway, not to them, but to something under the floor, or behind the walls, or inside him. Then, one morning he was gone. No breach, no broken lock, no footprints, no blood, just the empty cot. And one sentence, carved faintly into the concrete wall, with a nail, or bone, or God knows what. 3 days, you gave us none. The story leaked, of course. The file was sealed. But someone always talks. And eventually stories take root, especially when they feel older than truth. They say the foxes came back, not to haunt, but to remind that some debts aren't paid in gold, and some oaths don't expire with war. There are still places on the map no one builds on, still forests too quiet, still towns that warn hikers to steer clear of the northern hills. And they say, if you get too close to the ruins of Ashwood, you might see them, silver eyes, watching, waiting, and remembering. I've never been there myself, but I knew a man who went once. He came back without his voice, He never said what he saw, only that the trees felt full.